Also, there are still several spots for the Crete retreat. So if you are wondering, I think the Mediterranean is calling. So if you're able to, there are still, very nice. There are still several spots in the house, and there is still plenty of room for the England retreat. This is in Torquay. Beautiful hotel. We are trying to fill up the hotel so that it's just us. So hopefully we can get there. The book, it is Making Love to God. We're going to be with that book for several weeks, for actually a couple months.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have for announcements, Tina.
Well, Carol and I spent a few hours this week booking all our flights and accommodations for our European trip, which is very, very exciting. And we're doing a little bit of a reconnaissance trip in Italy between the retreats. So that's something to kind of whet your appetite for some other event, maybe coming up, whether it's this year or next year. Not quite sure. We are going to be spending a few days in Venice and going to Assisi in Italy. And it will be a reconnaissance mission for retreats. So we're very, very excited about that. But do consider joining us for our either one of those retreats if you're in Europe. As we've mentioned before, we can never assume that we'll be able to come back. That's gone out of our lexicon now, the assumption that we can always just show up next year. It's not necessarily the case, as you can all imagine. So it's going to be a wonderful time. And it's how many weeks away, Carol?
Oh, my goodness. So let's see. So for the Crete retreat,
about 6 weeks away.
Yeah, that one starts on May 25th. 1, 2.
Right.
So we are on the 9th. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 weeks.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome.
It's coming up quickly.
Yeah, so May in the Mediterranean is very nice. Let's see what Jesus has to say about it, because there's a lot of prayers to him going up today from around the world. And it's kind of amazing he has time for us today, I guess, really, when you think about it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what he has to say. You are blessed beings indeed. I am that one that you know as Jesus. Honestly, Easter Sunday is a busy time. It is a time with a lot of static, a lot of misaligned views and ideas that are expressing themselves. And of course, those of you that have been with us for a while understand what Easter Sunday is about. It is about mastery over the physical material world that all of you can achieve. Yes, all of you can achieve this idea that you can consciously create. You are all unconsciously creating. You are manufacturing your body all the time from your beliefs, thoughts, and ideas about the world, your worldview. And this is the thing that we want to remind you all of today, is that you are powerful creators. You have manufactured through your beliefs all of the things that you're experiencing, all of the physical manifestations in your body itself. You are no different than I was in that incarnation, other than I had multiple incarnations that taught me how to master my mind. And that final incarnation on the earth was where I got to demonstrate my mastery over the physical material world. At any point, I could have avoided the crucifixion. So there was no sacrifice there. It was an experience to teach my disciples and my students at the time about the valuelessness of the body and how I viewed it, and that no matter how cruel somebody could be to a body, that could be overcome. It was a demonstration of a teaching. It was never meant to represent me dying for future sins that you were going to commit. That is illogical, and it is not what the experience of Easter weekend was about. It never was, it never will be. You do not have to sacrifice and suffer. The demonstration that I gave on that Easter weekend was that sacrifice is pointless and unnecessary. But the crucifixion was emphasized over the resurrection, even though the resurrection is touted as my demonstration of being a God, or God in human form, as the church will say. The fact of the matter is that it was a teaching for those who were present, for those who were, in fact, becoming very attached to my physical presence. And it was time for me to leave that ministry in the form that I had been doing it for several years. They were my students and disciples, and they weren't just the disciples that you hear about in the Bible. I had many, many students throughout many, many different areas. I was always teaching. I was teaching women along with men, even though it was not public. It was not necessarily allowed in certain areas that I did teach. But it was a demonstration that the body had become too much of an identification for the students. They were no longer seeing the power within themselves. They weren't taking the teachings into their own hearts and minds. It was Jesus this, Jesus that, Yeshua this, Yeshua that. And an obsession had formed, what you would call an attachment to my physical form. And as I proceeded through my ministry, it became clear that it had a limited time. As I had mentioned in the book, Jesus, My Autobiography, I was informed of my exit point before it came. And there is no doubt that there was some trepidation about exiting in such a way. But the truth of the matter was that was the most beneficent way of exiting. And all of you in spirit, before you come into your physical form, decide on several exit points. You actually decide this with your guides and teachers, that you are going to have some exit points. And sometimes you will choose an exit point that's a good teaching opportunity, because in spirit, you understand that death isn't real. And so when you're choosing your exit point, you have no fear, you have no concern. You know that you're an eternal spiritual being. You know that you have to have a point of some kind or other. When you are setting up your incarnation, you may very well be excited that you're going to be exiting at the age of 38 or 54 or however, whatever the age is. You see it as a positive. You don't see it, oh, that's a short life, that's sad. From the side of spirit, you see this as the most beneficent time for you to leave, because you understand the bigger picture. You understand the eternal nature of your spirit, your soul, your consciousness, and you know what it feels like to be discarnate in that sense, not in a physical form. And you know that it's much nicer not being in a body than being in a body. You understand all of these things. And so the exit points are not moments of terror. They are blessed relief moments that you look forward to from the higher self's point of view. Of course, when you come into separation fully, you don't remember your exit points, and they, quote unquote, surprise you. Mine did not surprise me, because I was fully awake and we would say enlightened at that point. So I had the opportunity to share my exit point with as a lot of people, and it was for their benefit. The students who were studying with me then had to depend on themselves. They then had to develop in a way that they were not going to develop if I remained with them. And I was eager to take advantage of my exit point and use it as a wonderful teaching, learning opportunity. So for those of you that have traditional Easter ceremonies or have traditional teachings about Easter, this can be a challenging story. It can be discombobulating in a sense that it makes your worldview wobble, because you've been taught, perhaps in your church, if you're a Catholic, that this was a tremendous event that was to benefit humanity forever and ever. Amen. But when you go into the idea of the teaching that God sacrificed his only begotten son, if you actually think of the logic of these things, it makes no sense. The story that I told in Jesus, My Autobiography, makes sense. It's logical. And this is something that we want to point out, that if there is a phrase or a teaching that does not feel logical to you, and you're pretty smart, you're used to reading things and interpreting things, and then you hear a phrase or something that does not sit well, you can't quite figure out what it means, it doesn't feel right. Trust yourself that it doesn't feel right, and therefore you're not going to invest a lot of your energy into it, because this is really the teaching that we are bringing forth through A Course in Miracles and through this channel, this idea that alignment feels right, that alignment feels good, and that if there is any confusion in your mind, some aspect of your mind is misaligned. If your mind is going back and forth between two things and it can't settle on them, it means that you have two beliefs existing in your mind that are counter to each other, and one of them has to go. One of them has to go. And it's a very, very simple way of dealing with conflict within your mind. One of the ideas has to go. So that's what we want to point out today, is that sacrifice and suffering are unnecessary for you in your life. Do not use the crucifixion as an excuse for suffering, saying that Jesus suffered on the cross, therefore I must suffer, I must be unhappy, that makes me more holy. This is a pervasive belief in your society, and that the resurrection was in fact a demonstration of my mastery over the physical material world. And you will see, if you're fortunate enough to travel to the East and meet some master teachers there, that they have the ability to biolocate, that they have the ability to bring things into manifestation, and that this is what they have learned through their spiritual practices and studies. You, as Course in Miracles students, are seeing that as you change your mind, your body changes, your health changes, your life changes, your work changes, and you are truly understanding that it is mastery of mind that brings good into being. It is distortions in the mind that bring suffering and pain and confusion into being. Very, very simple teachings, not necessarily easy when you have such a complicated conditioning program in your society. So take solace in this idea today that suffering and sacrifice are not necessary, and that you are a creator, and that your assignment now as Course in Miracles students is to become conscious creators, so that you are using your God-given skills, your God-given connection to source, your ability to bring into manifestation that which feels good, that which feels right, that which excites you, that which gives you a reason to get up in the morning. And know that that is true. Your will, God's will for you is your will for you. And what that means is that what makes you happy makes God happy. And happiness and joy is your measure of how in alignment you are. So if you are not happy and content, keep doing the work. Figure out where it is that you are crucifying yourself. Where are you suffering unnecessarily? Where are you doing things that you don't want to do? You are a free being. You have the right to choose what you do, when you do it, and how you do it. And all you have stopping you is a multitude of conditioning programs that tell you otherwise. But if you think about it, if you've got this guidance system that allows you to be happy and joyful, and this guidance system that tells you immediately, it's incontrovertible when you don't want to do something or when you don't like something, You immediately feel worse. You know the second you don't want to do something or the second something doesn't feel right to you. Trust in that guidance system and understand that the thing that you are gazing upon that's upsetting you is not the issue. It's the interpretation of that gaze, your interpretation of that gaze that's causing you your suffering. All suffering is self-induced. And as difficult as that may be to understand, that is the truth. And so we wish you a happy Easter Sunday, and we wish you the freedom and the determination to bring into your life happiness and joy and creativity, and to find your alignment with your guidance and your guides and teachers who are always with you, helping you. That is our opening statement today.